What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, we had a surprising announcement from Sony that they were going to reverse their decision around shutting down the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita store, and it was actually Jim Ryan who delivered the update. We're going to go over that here today. Also, we're going to talk about Nintendo going after Switch hackers and actually filing a lawsuit against Bowser, of all people. Oh, and we're going to take a look at a couple of trademarks from Konami that could be pointing to something Metal Gear related coming up here kind of soon. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Sony and that PlayStation Cbomb issue that's been really talked about here over the last few weeks. That being, if the battery inside of, say, your PlayStation 4 dies and you have no access to PlayStation servers to resync your system, your physical media even will not work, which is very weird to think about. But some people have actually started to contact Sony and PlayStation, see if anything can be done about this, or if they are at least aware of the situation. We can see this tweet from Wamba Gem saying, I got a response. This from PlayStation saying, thanks for contacting PlayStation support about your CMOS query. I'm sorry for the delay in getting back to you. I can confirm that we are currently investigating this for you, and we will be back in touch when we have an update. If you need any help in the meantime, please let me know. And I will say this, it sounds like a typical PR response from a customer service agent who's just trying to send some kind of response back to you. I'd like to think that this means that Sony is actually looking into it, as it's certainly been a hot topic here over the last couple of weeks. And really, it's something they should be able to patch out without too much issue, and it would be a problem down the road. Even right now, if you think about it, like let's say the battery in your system dies or malfunctions now for the PS4. Well, if you don't have connection to the internet, then your system just will not work, even that physical media that you purchase and you actually own, in your collection. So we'll see if Sony actually does anything about this, but for now, it just seems like a typical PR response. But here's hoping they have something else to say here in the next couple of weeks about it. Also, we've been talking about xCloud heading to iOS devices and browsers for a little while now, and it looks like starting today, there will be an invite-only beta starting up to test out the iOS side of things and the browser side of things. We can see this here from The Verge, where they say the service will be accessible at xbox.com/play, where Game Pass Ultimate subscribers who have been invited to the beta will be able to play Xbox games through Edge, Chrome, or Safari browsers. More than 100 games will be available, and you can sync up a Bluetooth controller or just plug it in through USB to start playing. This from Catherine Gluckstein, the head of xCloud, saying, the limited beta is our time to test and learn. We'll send out more invites on a continuous basis to players in all 22 supported countries, evaluate feedback, continue to improve the experience, and add support for more devices. Our plan is to iterate quickly and open up to all Xbox Game Pass Ultimate members in the coming months, so more people have the opportunity to play Xbox in all new ways. And really, I look at this as just added value to the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription that you may already have. It's just, if you want to play on a browser, on a weaker computer, you can do that. If you want to play on your iPhone or your iPad, you can do that there as well. And it's just nice to see xCloud go to as many places as possible. And the browser development as well as iOS were kind of joined at the hip because that was the only way that Microsoft was going to get xCloud working on iOS devices, because Apple wanted to curate and rate and look over every single game that Microsoft wanted to add into the service, and they didn't want to do that, so they're going around it with a browser. But either way, good to see more options for places to play your Xbox games coming here soon, and we'll see how long it takes for them to roll out of this invite-only beta phase. Oh, and we've talked about Psychonauts 2 here and there as we've gotten news, but for the most part, the news has been that it's delayed several times, I think 3 times now. But we can see this tweet over on Twitter, this from Double Fine saying, and yes, Psychonauts 2 is this year. And yes, I've been mentioning that here and elsewhere for a while, but no, I can't tell you when, because someone from the company would arrange for a mysterious cactus accident to happen to me, but it is real, it is playable, it is coming. And I hope that means that at E3 we'll hear more about Psychonauts 2, and I'm hoping that means that it's getting set up for a fall release like August or September. I'm looking forward to it because I liked the original Psychonauts, but it's been a while since that came out. I played it on the original Xbox, and get this, on PC I played it from GameTap. I don't know if many of you remember that one, but yeah, it was actually one of the few good games on GameTap to play through, and I did enjoy it quite a bit. Very imaginative game, so I think if you have not tried it, you should, and look forward to this one, I guess, coming out this year. I would hope that it's playable, but I also hope that means that we don't have to wait too much longer to finally get our hands on it. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get in the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony changing their mind on shutting down the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita store. It does sound like the PSP store will still be shut down, although again, I have to really question that one, how many people are really using the PSP, considering there are a lot of PSP games also available to the Vita, and Sony may even see that as redundant, holding up the PSP and the Vita side of things for the digital storefronts. And you know what? I'm a little surprised they decided to change their minds on this one, but let's head over here to PlayStation Blog, where Jim Ryan actually wrote out the update, or at least attached his name to it, starting with, upon further reflection, however, it's clear that we made the wrong decision here. So today I'm happy to say that we will be keeping the PlayStation Store operational for PS3 and PS Vita devices. PSP commerce functionality will retire on July 2nd, 2021, as planned. When we initially came to the decision to end purchasing support for PS3 and PS Vita, it was born out of a number of factors, including commerce support challenges for older devices and the ability for us to focus more of our resources on newer devices where a majority of our gamers are playing on. We see now that many of you are incredibly passionate about being able to continue purchasing classic games on PS3 and PS Vita for the foreseeable future, so I'm glad we were able to find a solution to continue operations. And here's the thing, these stores will eventually shut down. Like, I don't know how much longer they're really gonna be up. It's good that I guess they're gonna stay up, obviously, through at least the summer, but originally we were only a couple of months out from the PS3 and the Vita stores going away just outright, and the Vita is like 10 years old, so that does seem pretty quick for that one. Remember, we also had stories that developers who were creating games for the Vita that had not come out yet got their development kits, and then they were just blindsided by that announcement that the store they were developing for would be shut down in a couple of months. They decided, are we going to race to the finish line to get this game out? Or are we just going to call it quits here after getting the development kit and getting like halfway done our game? It was a whole mess there. So I'm glad to see, at least for the developers who are creating the games and the fans of the Vita, even if there's only like dozens of them, that the store will stay up. And the PS3 is another interesting one because if you think about it, it's 15 years old. I know it's weird to think about that, especially if you were someone who bought it at launch. Yeah, 2006, 15 years, but I am happy to see the PS3 store stay up specifically because there are a lot of games on there that are very expensive otherwise, like PS1 games especially. Those are quite pricey. And if you think about it, we haven't really seen Sony push towards any type of backwards compatibility for something like the PlayStation 3, even the PS2 or the PS1 with their newer hardware. And that's the biggest thing here, because this will happen again. Sony will eventually look back and say, okay, can we shut those stores down now? Have people moved on from it since we're like halfway or 3/4 of the way through at this PS5 lifespan? Can we then say, okay, we're done with the Vita and done with the PS3 because really everyone's moved on from that? I don't know. Really, if they figured out a way to allow us to play PS3 games on the PS5, I think they could shut the store down very, very quickly. I don't think people would care that much because then they could move all that over and be like, you can buy it here now, I guess. But the other thing that's interesting about this is I think that would be a good way to bolster the Game Pass counterpunch, as people in the media have been talking about over the last few weeks now, that Sony is developing something to go up against Game Pass. But remember, Microsoft has had that big time push into backwards compatibility, which has found its way into Game Pass with Xbox 360 and even original Xbox games. So think about the idea of Sony saying, well, we don't see a ton of value in this, but it is quantity, right, that we can just kind of put into this PlayStation Game Pass. Here's PS1, PS2, and yes, even PS3 games, because I do believe that Sony can figure out how to make it work, mostly because people in their spare time have figured out how to emulate PS3 on PC. So like, to tell me that Sony couldn't do it if they really wanted to, I don't really buy that one. Also, this really shows that these companies do listen to the overall gaming community. Feedback is important, and I know not everyone likes to criticize certain companies or any of that, but at the end of the day, it is a good idea to voice your opinion respectfully to these different companies and let them know what you would like to see, because at the end of the day, you're the one buying the products from them. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo going after Switch hackers. We had talked about Team Executor actually being arrested in November, I believe, last year, and it looks like Nintendo has now filed their lawsuit officially, which you can view completely online. In fact, you can see some of it scrolling here as we kind of go over this, but yeah, you can see the name there. It is Gary Bowser. Now, this, according to Polygon, Nintendo of America filed a lawsuit Friday against Gary Bowser, a reported leader of Hack Creators Team Executor. Bowser and another Team Executor member, Max Lauren, were arrested and charged with 11 felony counts. This, like I said, last year in 2020. The lawsuit filed in a Seattle court is looking to charge Bowser with 2 trafficking counts and 1 copyright violation. Nintendo's described Bowser's operation as an international pirate ring that sells Nintendo Switch hacking devices designed to circumvent the company's security measures, allowing buyers to run pirated Nintendo Switch games. And they do point out several different devices, which includes the SX Pro, the SX Core, and the SX Lite. All of those can do things like hack into the Nintendo Switch or the Switch Lite and allow you to run homebrew, which, yes, does lead to piracy in some of these cases, as we've seen online, where games will leak out early and then people are already playing and sharing screenshots and video of them doing so on Twitter. Nintendo is looking for damages, $2,500 for each trafficked device, as well as $150,000 for each copyright violation, and they are naturally looking to shut down Bowser and Team Executor from selling these devices. And it's Nintendo doing what they have to do to try to protect their ecosystem of games with the Switch and the Switch Lite. It's something they need to do so that third parties don't feel like the Switch is too open to piracy. If you think of something like the PSP that got absolutely crushed when it came to loading up custom firmware and playing any game you wanted very easily, you look at the install size, you look at the number of games that sold on the PSP, and yeah, that probably had a lot to do with the PSP having a hard time just selling games in general. Also, Nintendo wasn't done here because they were also filing a lawsuit against an Amazon seller with an RCM loader. Check this out. This is from Torrent Freak saying, last November, Nintendo filed a lawsuit against Lee Hong Min, an Amazon vendor doing business under the name Winmart. According to the gaming giant, the trader was selling RCM Loader, a Switch device marketed as a plug-and-play solution for injecting payload files to allow booting into custom firmware. Once this circumvention has occurred, the unauthorized custom firmware modifies the authorized Nintendo Switch operating system, thereby allowing users to obtain and play virtually any pirated game made for the Nintendo Switch. All of this happens without authorization or compensation to Nintendo or to any authorized game publishers. Now, what's really interesting about this one is it seems that Nintendo realized they weren't going to get a response from this person. Apparently, they lived in Vietnam. And what they decided to do was have a small amount that would be due to Nintendo, about $2,500, not pursue anything when it comes to court costs, anything beyond that. But they wanted everyone to know that they won this case. You can see this here. Nintendo also informed the court that it had incurred considerable costs pursuing the case, but was not seeking to have those reimbursed. However, the company still demanded a judgment in its favor in respect of the DMCA violations, the misrepresentations made by the defendant in his DMCA counter notice, and the request for a permanent injunction. Basically, Nintendo wanted everyone to know that they took this person to court over selling these things on Amazon and that they won completely. In fact, this person's not even allowed to talk much about Nintendo at all going forward with this permanent injunction that's in place for selling and commenting on Nintendo's products and IPs. This is just Nintendo really trying to get in front of an issue that they technically created alongside of NVIDIA, with the Switch being a system that's pretty easy to hack when you have like the first run, but even beyond that, it's been hacked with like the newer ones. But a paperclip is generally what people use to get past the initial security for the first 20 to 25 million Switch units, and Nintendo can't do much about that, but they can work to, of course, scare people away from the idea of hacking the Switch if they're willing to go after even Amazon sellers, kind of moving these RCM loaders to hack the Switch. But it's just Nintendo in the courtroom trying to scare people, kind of business as usual there. Next up, let's talk about Nintendo and Labo. Do you remember Labo? Because it seemed like everyone was talking about online when it first came out, and then afterwards it sort of fizzled out. It got another bump with the VR stuff, but I have not seen anyone talk about Labo since then. Well, it looks like Nintendo might even realize this and maybe moving away from Labo. We can see this tweet here. This is from Ack Family saying, the official North American site for Nintendo Labo at labo.nintendo.com has been taken down and now redirects to the regular store page for the VR kit. I think it's safe to say that we're not seeing more Labo in the future. And I'll point out here, Emily Rogers does say, we'll get one more tiny announcement before Labo rides off into the sunset. And yeah, I mean, is anyone surprised? Like I said, there has been a lot of talk, no real hype around Labo. It was a cool thing when Nintendo first showed it because it was like, that's interesting. And then when I put it together, I was absolutely impressed at the amount of engineering and just thought that went into creating these different items like the piano, for example, because they had to also figure out, all right, people are going to be building these. And look, not everyone's going to be as inclined as, engineering or anything to be able to put it together. I mean, we saw Sean's video. It's like before you buy Labo, he got like the headpiece together for the robot, and I mean, that was kind of it, right? But at least the VR goggles are a bit easier. He was able to get that one together and all this. But like the idea of walking people through like the build process and kind of teaching them how all of it works together is pretty cool. It kind of gets your mind going for how some of these things are put together. And it showed off how really, I guess, interesting the Joy-Con really is and all the different things that it can do. But I mean, I don't think it caught on like Nintendo was hoping that it would, and they've kind of seemingly anyway moved away from a lot of the stuff that they had come to the table with originally with like the Labo starter kit and the robot, for example. But the VR headset appears to still be sold right now through retailers because they have that find a retail button, which kind of makes me think that would be the update that they would do, and it will probably be something for Pokemon Snap. Like Pokemon Snap through VR, that makes a lot of sense because you're not necessarily moving around, it's on rails, and I mean, to be able to look around and stuff, that would be pretty cool to kind of integrate the Labo VR into that game before, as Emily Rogers says, it rides off into the sunset. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Konami and their potential to break everyone's heart once again. We can head over here to Gematsu, where they say Konami filed trademarks for, okay, here we go, Akamaju Dracula, that's the Japanese name for Castlevania series, and Metal Gear Rising in Japan on April 6th, which were made public today. The company has not recently announced a new entry in the Castlevania series. Okay, so Castlevania could be anything, sure, but like Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. You know what? I like the idea of Metal Gear Rising Revengeance having some sort of remaster, remake, re-release, something like that for newer platforms. It came out on the Xbox 360 and the PS3 and those systems last year before the PS4 and the Xbox One came out, and then it came to PC on Steam a year later, and it got great reviews on Steam. It actually did pretty well overall, with Platinum doing, I think, a great job on the game. It's very fun. I like the idea of kind of the blade system that they set up. And yes, the game would be really cool on current platforms with like an Xbox Series X and a PlayStation 5 and a Nintendo Switch release. That would be interesting, by the way, to put it on the Switch, because would they be able to use like gyro with the Joy-Con controller? Would they be able to take advantage of any of the extra features with the Switch? Or maybe for something like the PS5, they work into like the advanced haptic feedback. Maybe we could look at things like 120 hertz support on the Series X and the PS5 at something like a 4K resolution. There's a lot of possibilities here that I would like to see pursued, but it is Konami and they like to let people down. So Metal Gear Rising Revengeance Pachinko machine could be coming up. We'll see. And before we go to the comment of the day, particularly the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, have recent rough releases like Cyberpunk 2077 and Anthem made you more hesitant to buy a game day one? 75% of you said yes, and 25% of you said no. And I was wondering if Anthem or Cyberpunk, especially Cyberpunk, that's like the Cyberpunk effect is pretty much been coined at this point as the games coming out that are certainly not ready to come out. And I almost wonder if people are starting to kind of have that thought of, you know what, maybe I should just wait a little bit and see how these games turn out. Maybe I will wait for that complete edition, because we heard on that interview with David Jaffe and John Garvin talking about if you love a game, you got to support it day one and buy it for $60 or $70. But like my question, and Jaffe did push back with this, how do you know you love the game? At this point, how do we know the game even works? And that's something that people will be asking a lot. I see a lot of people wondering if Returnal's worth it. Well, I'd like to think so with Housemarque, but we saw what happened with CD Projekt Red with that lineage pretty much get destroyed in the course of a week after Cyberpunk came out. So yeah, my advice is to do a lot of research, look at some gameplay, and decide if it's something you want day one or if you want to wait for maybe even the complete edition down the road. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from the Creation Station saying, I think Platinum could come up with some interesting ideas for the F-Zero franchise. You know what, at this point, why not? Let Platinum take a shot at it. I mean, I'm sure Captain Falcon is kind of over the top as it is. I mean, he punches like a fire falcon, right? So like Platinum could look at that and say, yeah, we could do some things with that whole franchise. Why not have them like fighting on top of the vehicles while they're cruising down, 800 miles an hour or something? They pick up the car and hit them with it, or why not? Let Platinum go absolutely crazy with F-Zero. It's better than what's happening now with it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There's Sony changing their mind when it comes to shutting down the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita store. Let me know what you think about that whole situation. Also, what about Labo? Are you surprised to see Nintendo possibly move away from it? And what about this whole thing with Konami and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance? Would you like to see a new version of that on current platforms? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.